The early morning sun poked through my window, letting me know it was time to get to work. I yawned, stretched, and put on a pair of shorts with a t-shirt, cardinals chirping hello to the serene August morning. It was already in the mid-60s, which meant a very warm and humid day would be on its way. The kids would be here soon, and I needed to make sure that everything was ready for the weekend. As the sun inched over the horizon and burned away the morning haze, I checked the cabins and found out everything in place for the new campers. Food packed the cabinets and freezers in the mess hall, large enough for a good amount of contingent for children. This would be the last weekend of summer camp for the year. Once these kids were gone, the Winoka Nature Reserve would be shuttered and forgotten until spring returned to claim the reserve from winter's icy grip. I checked the list that Roger had given me at the beginning of the camp season, and I went through the list of participants and stopped at the last unchecked date. This would be the weekend that I would help host the boys of St. Michael's Orphanage. Sorry, we don't use the word orphanage anymore. Political correctness sent out a memo calling St. Michael's a foster child care. It doesn't matter what they name it. St. Michael's houses all the unwanted children from broken and abandoned families. These kids were the modern-day wretched refuse that the Statue of Liberty talks about on its base. If not for the sizable donation from the Joseph Swift Foundation, these kids would never step foot in Camp Winoka. They were truly the lost souls, and if not for a few caring individuals, they would have slipped through the cracks of society without concern. For most of the camping season, snot-nosed rich kids ran around Winoka like they were personally responsible for nature itself. They were privileged, spoiled, and couldn't give a rat's ass about communing with nature and its wonders. The upside of those little rich kids is the money that their parents shelled out for us to entertain and amuse their rotten brats for a week. Their cash kept Camp Winoka running and afforded the opportunity to bring less fortunate kids to the camp. Although most of those young souls had never been out of the city, they appreciated the commune with forest life. After 30 years as a camp caretaker, this was my payment, seeing the wonder in their eyes when presented with the majesty of nature. With everything in order, I jumped on the camp's ATV and drove back to my Airstream trailer nestled off the camp proper. Looking into my bathroom mirror, I was a little unkempt. I swept back my salt and pepper hair and tied a rubber band around my ponytail, brushed out my beard, dabbed on some deodorant, and slipped into a clean yellow polo shirt with the camp crest. It was about 8 a.m. and the camp would come to life with new explorers soon. I fired up the ATV and went to the base camp to await the last campers of the season. I had just finished a Red Delicious when I heard a bus rolling down the dirt road. The Winoka Nature Reserve was an isolated slice of forest in the southeast corner of Ohio. It covered over 400 acres of privately protected woods and wildlife. Hiking trails wound through the forest without a telephone pole or a skyscraper littering the landscape. The cabins, mess hall, and even the suspension bridge across the Taylor Ravine were all built on 19th century ingenuity. A single dirt road was the only way in or out of the reserve. Roger was first off the bus. As usual, he was filled with energy, covered in summer sweat. Although most of the counselors were teenagers trying to add a community service star to their college transcripts, Roger had fallen in love with Camp Winoka and decided to make it a yearly commitment. He was an able-bodied guy, so I appreciated the help.
Jackson, how's it going, you old mountain man?
Roger thrust out a hand. I shook it. Everything's primed and ready to roll, Roger. While the other counselors tended to the kids, Roger slugged an arm around my neck and walked me away from the unloading bus.
Listen, Jackson, there's 22 kids this year, all boys, so we'll use cabins A, B, C, and we'll leave cabin D empty. There's a couple rowdy ones, but nothing we can't handle. After all, if we can't handle 24 kids for 3 days, we're in the wrong business.
He laughed and looked at me with a concerned expression.
How's your arthritis?
Good days and bad, Roger, I supplied. But nothing to keep me out of the game.
Good to hear. I'll get with you when all the kids are done settling in, and we can get over to the schedule. Here's to a great weekend.
He slapped me on the back and returned to the bus. The kids unloaded and settled into their assigned cabins without incident. From the checklist Roger gave me, the kids were 9 to 13 years old. Most in the lower part of the age range, just like every year. We gathered them together in the mess hall for introductions before lunch.
Good afternoon, campers.
Roger cheerfully bellowed. He was met with a semi-enthusiastic hello by the campers.
My name is Roger Lovick, but you can call me Roger. I'm the head counselor for your stay here at Camp Winoka. And this
He pointed to the 4 yellow-shirted counselors.
is Gary, Glenn, Mitch, and Tom. And this is Mountain Man Jackson.
He pointed to me.
He takes care of the campground all year long, keeps it looking great. If you ever have any problem during your stay, please let myself or one of these fine gentlemen know. We are here to make sure you have fun and stay safe.
Roger glanced to his clipboard.
With that in mind, we do have a few rules.
The children heaved a collective sigh.
Come on, guys. These rules are here for your protection. The nearest city is 45 minutes away and the nearest hospital is over an hour. Play safe, stay safe, right? Rule number 1. Everyone needs to be in their assigned cabins by 9 o'clock. When you're in the wilderness, the temperature drops about 20 degrees once the sun sets. Unlike the city, there are no street lights, it gets really dark and very cold quickly. Rule number 2. Every camper will be assigned a buddy. Your buddy is to be with you at all times. Well, unless you're going to the bathroom.
Everybody chuckled at this.
Rule number 3. Unless you're being led by a counselor, stick to the blue paths. If you look in your packets, you'll see the paths I'm talking about. Blue paths are safe to walk with your buddy. Red paths are trails approved for walking only when a counselor is with you. The black paths are off limits and are for staff members only. Rule number 4. Trail bikes, paddle boats, and canoes are available on a first-come, first-served basis. The sign-up sheet is located on the bulletin board outside the main cabin. We put a new sheet up after dinner for the next day of unscheduled activity time. And before you ask, the ATV is for counselor use only. Rule number 5. Be respectful of your counselors and your fellow campers. We have opened this once-in-a-lifetime chance to enjoy nature. Take advantage of it, not the people around you. And you're going to have a great time. What do you say?
The kids offered a civil round of applause. Roger waited for the smattering to die down.
And this year, we're offering a special surprise to the best campers. We will be choosing 6 of the best campers for a Sunday night excursion to the Light of Hope Ruins.
The kids erupted in applause and whistles. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself.
Great. Be on your best behavior, and you could be one of the chosen few. Now, let's all get in line for lunch. We have a lot to see today.
The kids continued to applaud as they lined up for the afternoon meal. I never minded putting together meals. When I was in the Army, it was an easy task. Every day, one of the counselors was assigned to KP with me. Unfortunately, they usually bitched and moaned about it. I never really understood that attitude. But you gotta get it over with. Don't drag it out by complaining the whole time. Besides, these kids were grateful to have a bologna sandwich, fruit cup with celery, peanut butter. It's those rich kids that had a special menu request that was a real pain. Needless to say, there was no vegetarians when you're poor. The next couple days flew by without incident. I'll be honest. I've never seen a group of lightly supervised kids not get into a little mischief when the counselor wasn't around. I guess the Light of Hope camp was a real draw. For those of you who did not watch the ghost hunting programs, the Light of Hope ruins are one of those places that have spawned many supernatural myths around them. This made life hellish for me. Matter of fact, I spent the majority of my off-season time running off idiots with their ghost detecting equipment. If anyone gets hurt, the sanctuary would be held liable for any injuries sustained. However, it never stopped anyone from spinning yarn around the campfire about the place that the media calls Gore Orphanage. The Light of Hope was located 3¼ mile of the main campground, close to the interstate annex. The 6 winners were easy to choose, and were elated when we called out their names that Saturday night at the assembly. The kids were a bit skittish due to the fact that we had to take one of the black paths through the dense woods. but Roger and I made sure that they tucked their pant legs into their socks to prevent ticks and chiggers from getting free ride to the campsite.
Mr. Jackson, what was that?
Close to the campsite, a kid named Connor Watson pointed into the woods where a clearing appeared. See those old markers? That's a graveyard over 100 years ago, I said.
That's creepy.
The boy had a worried face as I patted his head. Don't worry, Connor. Ghosts don't exist. You're safe. For now. I offered him a wink. We made the site about an hour before sunset and set to the task of putting up 2 tents. Each tent could fit 8 people comfortably, but it was a bit of a pain to set up due to the remnants of brick and stone left from 100 years ago. By the time we had them up, the sun had mostly melted into the horizon. The 6 winters were a bit rowdy and anxious, but we kept them occupied. Roger took half the kids out to forage for wood for the campfire, while I took the other half to help prepare dinner. Although Connor was not too happy about the deer stew, the others were unaffected. Mark Traeger acted almost ghoulish in his desire to try it. We set the gallon pot above a healthy fire. I served the kids some homemade apple cider I warmed over the fire to keep the cold away, while they finished their chocolate graham cracker marshmallow treats. Roger decided he would begin weaving the supernatural tale.
So, has anyone ever heard of Gore Orphanage?
All hands went up.
But does anyone know why it's called Gore Orphanage?
Most of the kids shrugged.
Well, back in the late 1800s, there was an orphanage located on this very spot. You've seen the bricks and timbers lying around our campsite, right?
They all nodded.
It was once a huge building that housed almost 200 children. It was originally called the Light of Hope Orphanage.
I jumped in. The kids they took in weren't good kids like you. They were mostly runaways and kids that weren't right in the head. And some were downright mean. But they were too young to go to prison, so authorities put them in the Light of Hope rehabilitation. You kids know what that means? Some nodded, intently listening. That means they hoped the orphanage could help them become good, productive citizens.
But some couldn't be rehabilitated.
Roger sighed.
Some children were dangerous and had to be chained up at bedtime. Some children were locked downstairs in the basement and were only allowed out for an hour a day. The worst of them were isolated in small, lightless parts of the basement and never allowed to play with other children. The people who ran the orphanage were too afraid they might hurt the other children.
The worst of them was a kid by the name of Lowell Frudd, I continued. Think the meanest kid you know. Now times that kid by 10. That's how mean he was. Nobody knows what made him so mean or if he was born with the spirit of the devil within him. His first night in the Light of Hope, he bit off another kid's ear. They tried chaining him, but he picked the locks and hurt the other kids. So, they put him downstairs, where he got free again. This time, he hurt a kid so bad that by the time the orderlies got him to the infirmary, the kid was almost dead.
Lowell had broken every finger and toe on the kid, joint by joint. And then he started on the kid's limbs, snapping his arms and legs one by one.
Roger accentuated this by breaking some dry sticks and tossing them into the campfire. As you can guess, Lowell had become far too dangerous to leave around the other kids, I offered. The people in charge decided to lock him away in the basement. They put him in a straitjacket and they only let him out to shower once a month. When they let him take a shower, they'd also wash down his cell. Let's just say that he didn't have the cleanest of bathroom habits.
But how did he eat?
Connor, the youngest of the winters, asked.
Good question,
said Roger.
Once a day, an orderly would bring in a bottle of liquid food, oatmeal or gruel, and force a tube down his throat. They'd empty the bottle straight into his stomach. The method worked until he bit off one of the orderly's fingers. After that, they had to strap him down to feed him.
Come on! Mark rolled his eyes in disbelief. It's true. A quick, serious look put Mark's doubt in check. They used an old rusty C-clamp to force his mouth open. Lowell fought them, but only succeeded in breaking off pieces of his teeth. They found records where the orderlies refused to feed Lowell because of his creepy, jagged-tooth smile.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that, Jackson.
Roger hit a laugh at my improvisation behind a cough.
Everyone that came in contact with Lowell Flood was convinced that he had the devil in him. But what could they do? The only way to leave the orphanage was either through adoption or when they turned 18. People knew that no one was going to adopt Lowell, and it was many years before he was old enough to legally leave. So in that small basement cell he stayed, and years passed.
Roger stood up suddenly.
Sorry, boys. I have to go relieve myself. Jackson, do you mind finishing the story?
I don't know, Roger. Do you think they can handle the rest of the story? To this, the children responded with a chorus of protests. Okay. I'll tell you the rest of the story as long as you guys promise to clean up afterwards and hit the bed. Deal? All agreed, and I passed around the rest of the steaming apple cider while Roger was heading into the woods for privacy. After a few years in the hole, people who ran the orphanage relaxed and let Lowell out of a straitjacket. They even let him eat real food instead of pouring gruel down his throat. It looked like he might have been turning a corner. He was going to make a good citizen after all. However, he had these eyes that looked like they housed the fires of hell. It unnerved anyone who met him. But he was behaving, so he got more privileges back, although he was still kept in the basement. Then, on an August night in 1910, a night kind of like this one, it happened. Lowell Flood picked the locks of his shackles. Any other person held prisoner for years would have made for the doors and escaped, but not Lowell. He went to the storage shed and got several cans of kerosene. Back then, kerosene was used in lamps instead of a light bulb lamp that we're used to. He crept through the night, pouring gallon upon gallon of kerosene all around the building, in the hallways, and any other place he could move without drawing attention to him. He poured the final trail of kerosene out the main doors and wedged a piece of lumber across the doors, jamming them closed. And then he put a match to the kerosene. The boys gasped. They were hooked. And in that dark night, much like this night, Lowell Flood laughed as he watched the orderlies and children helplessly pound on the doors and windows as the flames grew taller and hotter. Survivors say he sat down on the front lawn and watched it all burn to the ground. His eyes red, glowing, smiling his broken smile. "What a bunch of bull," offered one of the oldest winners, Mark Traeger. "You think so?" I asked. "Here are the facts, young man. On that August night, 172 children and employees died, burned alive. Only 17 children and an orderly survived. By the time the fire trucks responded, it was too late. All the firemen could do was watch the Light of Hope orphanage burn to the ground and listen to the dying screams of the trapped orphans. In case you've forgotten, you're sleeping on the ruins of Gore Orphanage. Oh, and there's another fact I should share. The children all held their breaths when they asked in unison, what? Lowell Flood's body was never found. The local sheriff office searched the woods for a week, but they found no other survivors, nor did they find Lowell Flood. The only trace of Lowell was where the survivors said he was sitting on the lawn. A single word was burned into the grass. Home. People say Lowell Flood roamed the woods of the Winoka like a wild animal until his dying day. Some say his spirit still haunts these woods, and on certain nights, a night like this one, you could hear the wailing of the orphan children, warning the living when Lowell Flood's lurking about. Wait. Listen. The kids looked at each other as the night sky covered the woods in darkness. Only the occasional crackling of the fire interrupted the silence. And almost on cue, a high-pitched moan filtered through the surrounding trees. What was that? Connor sputtered. I have no idea, I said flatly. Just stay near the fire. It was then I saw Connor, mouth wide open, pointing at the woods. One by one, The other kids followed his finger in the tree line. 2 small red orbs the size of human eyes glowed, and from the thing in the tree line came a single guttural word. The children froze, and their panic drenched the area. The thing advanced again, and they all began shrieking, but huddled close to the fire. Mark even pulled a partially burning stick from the campfire and held it in front of him. He repeated, drawing closer to the campsite. The children were seconds away from a blind panic, and I exclaimed, "Lol, Frud! It can't be!" The thing burst from the tree line and into the light of the campfire. The children offered one more unified scream before the realization that it hit them. It was Roger.
Gotcha!
He laughed, walking up to the campfire. He showed them his glasses with the red LED lights and sat down next to the log fire. "You kids should know better." I couldn't contain my laughter. "Ghosts don't exist." The kids offered weak protests to the prank, but Roger and I couldn't stop laughing. Once the adrenaline surge died down, the kids compiled our wishes and went to bed in their tents. Roger and I made sure all the boys were secure in their sleeping bags before we returned to the fire.
That worked better than I thought,
said Roger.
I didn't believe you about that moaning thing.
Earlier that week, I had told Roger about the trucks driving the interstate, close to Gore Orphanage. It caused a sound which, when filtered through the dense forest, sounded like another worldly moaning. Many paranormal investigators had reported it as evidence of ghosts, but it was quickly debunked as passing big rigs. However, we're going to take advantage of any free story elements we could.
Did everybody get their fill of cider?
Roger looked at the stack of empty cups. No problems there. I stood and stretched. We got a big day tomorrow. Game over.
Is it?
Roger smiled. The kids slept like logs. Roger and I found it difficult to wake them up. In fact, I guess I put too many sleeping pills in the apple cider. The next morning, the kids made their groggy way back to the main camp and prepared for the return to the St. Michael's Orphanage. I smiled and waved at the children whose names I'd soon forget. Well, maybe I'd remember one. I'm sure the bus ride back to the St. Michael's Orphanage was uneventful, with the exception of the winners regaining their wits long enough to ask where their fellow orphans were. Roger would handle it with his usual charm like he had done in previous years. Probably some excuse like an asthma attack, spider bite from a brown recluse, or some such nonsense. It didn't really matter. There was always a new batch of bright-eyed junior counselors every year. A missing child on the books meant an additional $60,000 went straight into the administration's pocket. All angles were covered. Orphans are the lost souls of society and would never be missed. Roger joined me later that day. We strolled into Cabin D with an uncontrollable grin. Connor Watson, eyes mixture of uncertainty and terror, lay bound and weeping in the corner of the cabin. I told you, Connor. Ghosts don't exist. But monsters? Monsters are real. I drew my knife and closed the cabin door.